With COVID-19 shutting down schools, college campuses, and just about everything else, the military has been forced to find new places to recruit the Gen Zers. The traditional places that might have worked 15 years ago, like malls and sporting events, sporting events we couldn't even have done last year, they're not possible right now. They're actually impossible. We're going to find out today where the military is recruiting from and why some people in politics in D.C. are opposed to these new methods of recruiting, and why one side says they're not recruiting, the other side says they are. We're going to find out all of this from our resident Gen Z expert coming up next. And this is To The Point. I just have to be dramatic when we say it because it makes us sound so important. So, that's what we're about today. This is To The Point. We're going to talk about an interesting topic, and it's near and dear to my heart that I hear about it so often from so many people. People are constantly talking about recruiting. Now, when I was recruited, I actually went to the recruiting office, but I saw the recruiters around my high school campus year after year. Day after day, they were constantly there. In fact, when I graduated from boot camp before I went to the School of Infantry, we were able to do recruiter's assistance, which meant we went to malls and sporting events to recruit folks so we could stay at home longer. And recruiters go through extensive training. Well, now that's changed. With COVID-19 closing schools across the country, college campuses aren't available. Where are recruiters able to go? Most malls aren't having people running in the middle of it. And there's not a lot of traffic at malls right now. And how many people are going to have an intimate conversation with a recruiter sitting at a mall? And obviously, sporting events are closed, and there's nobody at these sporting events that we're watching now on TV in the bubble and everywhere else. So they've had to go elsewhere. Now, the people they're targeting are Generation Z. And we've talked about Gen Z with our resident expert, author, and TV show host, Pavlina Osta. Now, she's going to join us today, and we're going to talk about the latest controversy because, see, this is where the folks are at. The recruiters are going to Twitch. Now, e-gaming is huge in our industry. In fact, a week before COVID-19 slammed America, a game called Warzone was released by EA. Now, this game, in a record 15 days, had over 50 million downloads and has since been seen all over the world, played by athletes who are now back in competitively. People are making lots of money. In fact, an e-gamer can average over $3 million by just e-gaming. It's a craze, and folks are all over it. So now these branches have e-gaming teams. They claim it's for the sailors and soldiers to have camaraderie and kind of show what goes on in the military. People on the other side, like AOC from the Democratic Party, she says it's illegal and they're recruiting people illegally. To discuss this and a few other great topics, we're bringing in our Gen Z expert, Pavlina Osta. So let's get to the point with our good friend of the show, Pavlina Osta. Welcome back to the show, Pavlina. How you doing?
I'm good, Eric. Thanks for having me back. I always appreciate it.
Of course. I'm so happy I got my hands on your book. I've been just enjoying it. I have your book and Cooper Lawrence's book. They both came about the same time, and I'm loving both of them. They're completely different topics, but really good reads. And it's cool. I always get to interview people who have cool books. I mean,
yes. Well, thank you so much.
I don't know if I would tell a guest that their book sucked, but yours doesn't. I mean, even though I'm not in the 20s, but we get them. We got enough to go to our 20-year-olds, so they like them. So. You know.
Oh, I love it. I was going to say, you got to get your kids to read them because that would be perfect.
That's the goal. That was why we got them, and they were like, hey, we got a book. But I like to read the book first, just so I could say I read it. because I want to give you a good, I want to do I got to do the Amazon review thing. So
Yes. Oh, girl. Yes. I need all the Amazon reviews.
you got to do the
Yes.
Amazon reviews. But we have you here today on an interesting topic that's kind of good for both of us. It's something that I have some background in, and you are obviously the Generation Z. You're our Gen Z expert, so you come on here. So as we both know, high schools and college campuses are closed, and one group of folks loves to go to campuses to recruit, and that would be our military. And it's kind of divided folks, because where they found all the gamers is, I just gave it away, is on Twitch. And Twitch has grown. And before you came on, I was telling the folks about Warzone by EA, which, Battlefield is not Battlefield. This is completely different. It's Call of Duty. Sorry, there's multiple games. But Call of Duty Warzone has broken all the records. In the first 20 days of COVID, it had over 60 million downloads. NBA players are on there raising money. Some of the biggest names like, Spider Mitchell from the Jazz, Myers Leonard, who is like Mr. All-Day Gaming. In fact, a lot of these guys still are gaming right now while they're in the NBA bubble, which is hilarious to watch. But obviously there's gaming teams. E-gaming is so big and the money is crazy. And they do it right there in New York all the time. They, rent out Madison Square Garden or Barclays Center, and gamers show up. They do the e-gaming draft there for the NBA. And now recruiters have been in there working with their Navy e-game team and the Army e-game team. Those are the two that we'll pick on, because they're the two that actually have teams. And some people are offended that recruiters are recruiting Gen Zers via Twitch. So I have you here to kind of speak on this as a Gen Zer. Now AOC, who somehow has made herself the focal piece, it doesn't matter what party you're in, she tends to be that person who loves to cannonball the kiddie pool and just cause an argument. We saw her at the DNC be the only person to nominate Bernie. She doesn't care. She got Amazon booted from New York, which would have caused an amazing amount of jobs for the wonderful state of New York. She goes against her own party's lines, and now she says this is illegal. So do you, as a Gen Zer, not that you have to be a gamer, but are you as a Gen Zer and your friends going, is this intrusion, or is it you understand this is part of electronics in the world that we're in, and this is how people are reaching people?
Yeah, okay, so you basically said it. Like, this is how people are reaching, younger people. You have to go with the times, and this is happening all over multiple social media platforms. Like, different companies will reach out or have ads, whatever it may be, to target certain demographics, certain kinds of people. Like, this is all over social media. So the fact that the Army is trying to recruit people off of Twitch, if anything, it's kind of brilliant, because before they were in the high schools, those are now closed. They were in the malls, half of those shut down before COVID, but now they're definitely closed. They don't have any way to recruit people, and Generation Z are in their late teens, early 20s, perfect age to get recruited to go into the Army military, and they're just going with the times. I think this is great. I know some Gen Zs might be getting annoyed with it, or they might not like it, but who doesn't like certain things? You know what I mean? Maybe you are a big gamer, you're on Twitch, you find this, you get recruited, and you have an amazing career, or you find yourself in the Army, like you have this beautiful thing that happens from it. So you never know which side it could go, but I think it's brilliant that they're doing that and updating their tactics on how we can recruit people.
Absolutely, and I love that you say that, because a lot of today's war fighters it's very electronic. It's very video game friendly. If you think about drones, right? We'll pick on drones. That technology alone is very remote, very video game oriented. I mean, even our own troops are being trained in these virtual platforms. They're very realistic. I mean, it's a different world we live in than 15 years ago, where you could go to these things called malls and schools and sporting events that were heavily populated. But it's different now. I mean, it was pre-COVID. It was different. Going to a game and trying to get recruited. Twitch is great, because if you're going to go get an audience, if you're playing a game like a Battlefield or a Wars or a Call of Duty or any of those Call of Duty games, I mean, they have a hell of a franchise. You already kind of have that tendency to want to be in the military as it is, if you geek out on that stuff.
Yeah, you're already sort of interested in the same stuff.
So when I was reading what you were talking about, I was like, well, well, it's a genius idea. Number one, they have an e-gaming team. So why
Yes.
not kind of showcase, hey, this is what you could do in the Navy if you qualify. It's not saying everybody in the Navy is going to join the e-gaming team, but I mean, where else are they supposed to go find our nation's finest? I mean, it is a volunteer force. We have to be able to go do it, but I don't understand. I personally don't understand what the issue, like I'm like, how is this any different than an advertisement during a sporting event or the news? I mean, how is that any different than, hey, do you want to join the military? Oh, you like that? I don't understand what and I love the quote, it came from the Navy Recruiting Command said, esports teams is the way to make sailors and it shares what sailors and what we do more relatable to the next generation. It's hard to showcase that because I'm sure I know you haven't served, so your military experience is probably what you've seen on TV or the commercial. And by the way, Marines have never fought a dragon. If you've seen the commercial where one of us fights a dragon or hangs from a mountain and gets our uniform, we've never done that. It's just all TV. Just in case you were thinking I've done that, I have not.
Definitely thought you did, but it's cool, whatever.
They make it so cool, right? You watch the commercials. I know my kids watch them, and you see the Army commercial, right? And it shows all the tech jobs. To me, this is genius. It's another
That's what I'm saying.
marketing
It's
platform.
totally genius. People do this, like I said, on other social media platforms. They're always trying to get you to, they're selling you something in some way, It's brilliant. And not only are you the thing with Twitch is you get to watch them play the game. So anyone that's in the Navy, the military, those that you can follow them basically, you get to watch them play, and they get thousands of eyeballs on that. It's brilliant for them to recruit people and to get people even interested.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I've been reading both sides of this and hearing the debate, and to me, it's kind of blown me away because AOC's thing is try to imagine explaining Twitch to the members of Congress.
Oh, okay. I know.
But that's not our problem. We don't have to do that. They still can't figure out Facebook. Even, we just had, Zuck sitting on top of Capitol Hill, and you had a congressman going, well, you banned on Twitter. And Zuckerberg's like, well, I'm the CEO and founder of Facebook, so I don't know what goes on at Twitter. It's like they're out of touch no matter what, but where are we supposed to recruit that's where I think people don't, and I don't know, and maybe you and we could bounce this off, but I kind of think this is that same movement that goes with this whole defunding of law enforcement to go with how are we, if we're not supposed to recruit, how are we not supposed to do it? They've already restricted recruiters on high schools. Before that was already very difficult because people are they wear their uniforms and we get offended. And it's
right.
Do you like terrorism? Because I don't.
I remember seeing the recruiter officers in my high school and stuff. I never had a problem with it. I was just okay, they're doing their thing. My school had a massive ROTC program. That was a huge deal for the school. You have to get them interested or involved in some way, and by literally going where they are going, it's like getting involved in TikTok. It's okay, that's brilliant. That's where all the Gen Zs are. Let's go where they are. Let's play whatever games they're playing to get them interested. That's just what you do these days because Gen Zs, especially millennials, of course, as well. But because we grew up with technologies, cell phones in our hands, all of this stuff, we are bombarded with so much stuff all the time. Yep. I'm checking Twitter, Twitter constantly, TikTok constantly. I'm getting different ads thrown at me. There's Instagram. There's so much going on to begin with that, if you're gonna go on a platform that I'm already on, more power to you, because now you're just informing me on what you guys do. It's cool, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I'm not a gamer. I know nothing about. I've never been on Twitch, but I know it's the largest live online streaming video gamer platform. Yeah. That is what everyone uses. It is the literal perfect place for the Army to try to recruit people.
It's just to me, when I saw it as a marketer, I was I pumped the brakes. I went, wait a minute, whoa. We target everybody, and Jonah Berger, famous Wharton professor who's written some amazing books. He always talks about top of mind, tip of tongue. But he also talks about, and so does Seth Godin, talks about being in front of your audience. Well, this audience is your generation, Gen Zs, and the younger side of the millennial audience. Right. They're perfect for the age bracket to join our military. Well, where are they supposed to recruit them from? besides the folks that naturally walk into the office. Now, the Marine Corps is not included in this. Marine Corps historically has not been, I mean, they do send out recruiters. I was on recruiters assistance back in my day. I have friends that have been recruiters. But historically, a lot of people just go into it. You know, if you want to be a Marine, it's one of those wacky things. We're also the smallest branch. But like the Army, this is how they go out and get folks. And they do have numbers, and they do need to encourage it. But how are we going to go get these really smart guys and gals that we want that are gaming? They're geniuses. If you're really good at video games, you tend to be wicked smart at what we need you to do, you know, cyber stuff. So to me, it's natural selection. It's just marketing the way I look at it. And they're and people are like, well, just look at how offensive it is. And I'm like, you're always going to have some turd talking smack to you. That's what I was reading a couple of these articles, and I was like, oh, you mean trolls? Trolls are everywhere. We all have them if we do anything in the spotlight. And of course, you're going to get some 12-year-old who's on Call of Duty who's going to run his mouth. And, you know, I believe one of the quotes that they said to one of the sailors that was a recruiter said, how many war crimes have you committed? Like, like original.
I know.
I just don't understand. Okay, AOC, she's considered Gen Z. She's not Gen Z. She's a millennial, right?
She's a millennial. She's in her late 20s, I think.
Okay. I mean, she seems to be this, you know, the millennial Gen Zers seem to look up to her, which I kind
of... Oh, absolutely, because they see her as someone that was a bartender, you know, she went to college, it's like, okay, like, she's very much like us, and then became this, like, powerhouse, right, on the Democratic side, and they were like, oh my gosh, she, like, gets what we want, she understands where our minds are, basically, she's very good at tackling different, you know, being kind of provocative on certain things. You kind of said that earlier with, you know, she always seems to get her hands in like certain things and then kind of blow it up. And then everyone's like, oh my gosh, AOC said this. And I think a lot of young people like respect her and look up to her. So she has a very powerful voice in that sense, because millennials and Gen Zs are the largest generations that are kind of coming into our workforce already. And to have that voice, you know, to have her voice basically it's a powerful thing. So for her to speak out on it is something that's, you know, it's interesting.
But so this is going to be like, Eric, ask questions to Gen Z. That's what this episode is suddenly going to become. But, you know, I look at it, and then I look over at the Republican Party, and hey, it's election 2020, and I don't think we're being political. We're just pulling apart, you know, kind of noticing things. I don't see anybody from the Republican Party as the AOC of the Republican Party. I know people can say Dan Crenshaw, a Navy SEAL, Dan Crenshaw's kind of he's not kind of outspoken. He is, but he's not. He's probably going to be like, dude, I'm not a millennial. He's definitely not a millennial. I know SNL has picked on him, and, you know, he's kind of but he's a good sport about it, and his content's good. He uses social. You know, I don't know, but to me, you tell me, you're Gen Z. Do you prefer your politicians being more in the public eye via social, like you see AOC? Crenshaw is very much this way. I'm seeing, but then there's the downside of it. Those two, I think, are doing positive things for their party, and kind of, it's good to see, because we need more people to be fired up about politics and get involved, because our country needs voices. And I think while they're both extreme at points, I do think that the bad cases, and they always happen to be from Florida, which makes you and I cringe because it's our home state. But just recently, you had a representative from Florida say that Beyonce is really an Italian girl named Alicia. Well, it was a false statement. And then at the start of the DNC, a representative from the state of Florida wrote, why is George Floyd's family there? Are they giving away meth?
Yikes.
The tweet was taken down, but the screenshots, you know, like everything, people... It's like, you know, we're pretty good. We screenshot everything.
For that reason, I feel like sometimes some people just like open Twitter and like crazy stuff pops in their mind, and then they have like this overwhelming idea that they should post that, and it's just like, whoa, this is still going to be seen by the world. Like, you might want to rethink whatever you're about to say. I'm not very active on Twitter. I prefer Instagram. That's like my, you know, social media of choice. But it amazes me. Every single time I hear something crazy like that on Twitter, I'm like, what compels these people? What does this app do to your mind to where you think you can say something as insane as that? And especially if you're a representative or you're an elected official, right? What are you saying? Like, first of all, and I think to answer your one question, I well, obviously, AOC is very young. She is young, she's hip, she knows how to work the social media. She's already really connected with, younger Democrats, especially here in New York. Everyone
Yeah.
loves her over here. I'm still mad about the Amazon thing, but
Yeah.
whatever. And with Crenshaw, I think, yeah, he's definitely a lot older. I like him. I think
Yeah.
he's cool. I think it's like one of those things, like if Nancy Pelosi was all over my social media, I'd be like, well, lady, I don't need to see you right now. I'll watch the news. You know what I mean? Or something like that. But if it's someone that is very vocal about things, and I definitely agree with them, yeah, I'd want to see it on my feed. Like that's something I'd be wanting to see, whatever side I'm on. If I follow them, then that's cool. But most of the time, I think because so many politicians are just so much older, their content is not something I'll save that for when I read an article or when I watch the news.
So here's my question for you. And this week we had Lisa Bodenberg, United States Marine Corps. She's now a reservist. She's a door gunner, just generation badass. And she's a millennial. And we had this discussion when it comes to politics. And I absolutely agreed with her. How come, and maybe your generation could be the generation that changes this. My generation has somehow screwed it up. Why? It's true because my brain doesn't think like you have to be Democrat. And if you're a Democrat, you have to think this way. Or you're a Republican, you must think this way. And you're like, well, to me, politics is like shopping, right? I like this top with those shoes, and I can't buy them all at the same store. If I want to go to Nordstrom's, maybe that's not where I'm going to get like half my what I'm going to do. I know I'm just pandering to my audience and using clothes, but to me, that's how I look at like elections and like voting. Why is it, and maybe your generation can change this, but there's parts of AOC that she says things and I'm like, I totally kind of can see where you're coming from. Same thing with Crenshaw. I look at some of the things he says, but then I look at both of them and then they both start kind of towing the party line when they need to. I mean, AOC at the DNC, she was quick to be like, hey, I did it because yada, 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 you're supposed to. It's protocol. I demand an apology. And I'm like, all of a sudden you went from like, to like, I'm going to toe the party line. Do you think your generation will be able to get people to, because to me, and this is my, I don't know, I believe that you should be able to think for yourself. And if we all think the same, we're very boring. Like, I don't want to think the same as you. Does it mean I don't have to think like Pavlina to respect you and be friends with you? I could sit across from you with a drink and we could have a long discussion and I wouldn't walk away going, she's stupid. No, I would be like, do you think your generation is actually going to be able to start swaying people to be more, think outside this proverbial box of this two-party system where it's like, oh, it's like, cool, you don't like the president? Good for you. That's great. You're allowed to do that. Understand that's politics. We don't have to like the president. It changes every 4 to 8 years. But we can still be friends. It's like people need to tell you stupid stuff all the time. Like, I don't like Biden or Trump. What do you want me to do? Hand clap for you? I don't know what I don't know how to react to these things. So kind of let's go from there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, okay. I feel like Generation Z, okay, so millennials and Gen Zs, they are so open-minded and they're very open to change and they care a lot about things and they want to see change. They want the world to get better. Like that is like what drives so many of them, which is why they're so involved in these protests. They care so much about mental health and like they're very open-minded with all of these different things. But I also feel like when it comes to politics, it is so black and white. And what I was trying to think about it earlier. I agree with what you're saying. So I'm an independent. I like to kind of cherry pick. I'm like, okay, I like these shoes. I like this shirt, like let me kind of go all over and I'll just decide and think for myself. I think a lot of millennials and Gen Zs, either they're not informed properly or they're getting their sources from one side and one side only, or they're just going off of hearsay. They really just like kind of stick where they're staying. And the more I talk to millennials and Gen Zs about politics that where they are well informed or where they at least know what's going on, they're pretty malleable and you're able to talk to them unless they're like really far to the right or to the left. Like then it kind of goes back into that black and white. I hope our generations could kind of change that and be a little bit more understanding of each other. But from what I've seen, and I just feel like it's still everything is politicized. And kind of like what we were talking about earlier, you mentioned one viewpoint and someone doesn't agree with it. all of a sudden I am no longer your fan. I am like, I want nothing to do with you. Like that kind of mindset is not open-minded and doesn't match the tolerance and everything else that they sort of stand for. So it's an interesting thing to kind of see with them because they're so open and they care about people and they want your mental health to be good. But the moment you mention something political they don't agree with, like you're not cool anymore. Like I don't even want to be your friend anymore. Like I can't even look at you. So that's just what I've noticed. I hope that tide can change. I think, millennials or Trump is a very triggering thing for the topic, whatever. Just saying Trump, everyone's like, oh my gosh, what? For millennials and Gen Zs, like it's very triggering for them. And, even to come off as a supporter, like they're just silent about it. Like I know so many young people that actually support Trump and they don't say anything. Like they're like, I'd rather just silent majority. Like they just want to like lay low kind of thing. But or they'll just kind of go with what everyone else is saying. So that's what I've noticed with that.
Yeah. And it is crazy because there's so much. I mean, it's the same. I've noticed it on both sides, like even supporting Biden. Nobody really wants to get, I don't want to throw my hat on either one of them. And I'm very public on this show about my opinion on it. I think you were on when I said, hey, the choice is like shooting yourself in the leg or shooting yourself in the heart. It's going to leave a wound. You're going to bleed a little bit and have a limp. It's going to suck. And to me, voting and growing up with, great presidents. I remember, meeting, President Bush and, Clinton and Obama. I was more amazed they were presidents of the United States of America than thinking of their political party. I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't care. Like President Reagan, who so many people love, even your generation is huge on Reagan and what he said.
You really are.
And, we live in this generation where you're right. We talk about it where we're going to go, folks at home. I am going to say things about two candidates running for president. I'm not going to bash either one of them. I'm just going to say things that they do because we're talking about Gen Z. There's three generations that love social media that understand it. My generation, being Gen X, we kind of came up with it all as it kind of grew with us. So we've had Twitter from days of old when it was only 140 characters, dang it. And Facebook when it was an idea, and MySpace, and your generation, obviously, and millennials. You guys grew up with this, like devices in your hand. So here we are, we're in election 2020, and they're going to try to win hearts and minds. And you're right, the president of the United States is very electrifying. He can tweet something and set the world on fire. Same thing, Biden can respond and set the world on fire. But here's an interesting thing. Cooper Lawrence, who has a great radio show in New York City, great guest of the show, great friend of the show, just like you, wrote a book talking about celebrityocracy and talking about celebs and how they influence. Do you know that what's an amazing stat is celebrities really don't influence elections? And everybody's like, oh, like I saw LeBron James is going to support Biden and Harris. Okay. How LeBron James feels isn't going to, and I think it's funny because I'm like, well, yeah, they're like, well, yeah, you're a Gen X. Nobody cares what you think. And I'm like, we have a lot of voters and we're pretty smart. And we kind of grew up in the middle of the world where I read a book a week. So trust me, I'm pretty scary because I don't really care what LeBron's politics is because that's just not my thing. Like I love what he does as an entrepreneur and a basketball player. I could care less how the man votes because it's not going. But Cooper shared that really doesn't sway voters. Now, do you feel that your generation is actually affected more by that than, because they're going off of studies that millennials and Gen Xers, they're not going to be swayed by a Beyonce or a Jay-Z or even, hey, let's throw his name in there because he's on some ballots, Kanye, Mr. West. Do you think your generation will be swayed by that? Like seeing Kanye on there, like, are you as a voter going to be, like, do you think if you had friends and whatever, like he's not on very many big city ballots, but if the ones do you think people will be swayed by those bigger names either endorsing or somebody like Kanye stealing votes?
I think what they want from celebrities that they admire is they want them to talk about it. They want them to be involved in politics. It was a huge thing when, Taylor Swift came out as, I think, a Democrat. No one knew her politics before she came out with some of her political ideas. They all kind of thought she was a Republican, but didn't really know. They like to know these things because, they like to be involved in these celebrities' lives and they want to know what's going on, what they're thinking. I don't actually think it has that much sway in their voting. I think they're a little smarter than that. I really hope they are because just to be like, oh my gosh, Taylor like loves this person. I'm gonna like vote for that one because that's who Taylor likes. It's just like, whoa, like babe, think a little bit for yourself. Like let's back up. Like let's do some research. What do you agree with? What are your thoughts? Like that it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about just thinking for yourself. I sure as heck hope so that they're thinking for themselves and they're not letting that sway them. I don't think it is though, because Gen Zs and millennials are very good at their research. They like to know the best option for everything. They're very well informed, and or at least they try to be very well informed. So I think if anything, they like to know what that celebrity is thinking, but that's not going to sway them in what they're going to do.
I love that you say that because it's true. Your generation, I sound so old when I say this, and I'm not. I'm connected to my cell phone. I think I could probably compete with most of your generation of being on your phone more, which isn't a bragging right, but I am proud of it. I love my phone.
Yes.
But you said some key points there, right? Like you guys do the research, and it's true. I mean, everyone I see in your generation, including yourself, you do amazing research. I mean, I see your pitches that come across my desk, and I'm like, she does her research. It's impressive because there's a lot of people who don't. And I think people count you guys out because they just think you're, because here's the thing, is this.
Dancing on TikTok all day.
They think because you have this in your hand, you're not using it to empower yourself. Yet your generation is the reason why Audible and Kindle are so popular because you can put books here. You don't, I also have books on my phone, and I have Audible. It's one of my favorite things, but I also buy the physical copy. Like, I have a copy of your book, and people like those books. They're fun. It's fun to own the book. Like, I like it. I mean, it looks really showy. I think that's why I actually have, because to be honest, I listen to more books than I read, but I own the same books that I listen to are sitting on my shelf. I mean, I like that. But
I have to have like a physical copy of a book. I don't like to read on my phone because it makes my eyes so tired. But I also like to highlight and to annotate. So I feel you. I always have to get a physical copy.
So as we dive into this, like so many people look at this generation. It started off like recruiting. People look at Twitch. Right. Now, to me, I think people judge and think things are bad or have come out against them because they don't understand them. A lot of people, if you and I were trying to explain Twitch, we would probably have two different. I'm an avid gamer. I love gaming. I've been gaming for most of my life, and sitting right behind me is an Xbox. And it's a brand new one. I love this thing to death. And there's several of them in our house, and I'm an avid gamer with my kid. He's 13, and I game with him, and I have no shame in my game. But
that's awesome. I love it.
It's just we both would probably have a different definition of what Twitch is, but I think that's where it gets lost in translation is because then. It goes out to bigger people who try to explain it, and then all of a sudden, however many millions of Americans are here, all of a sudden people are like, they're doing either something bad or something good when they're not. Like Twitch is not some evil device, just like to me, TikTok is not some evil master plan to spy on Pavlina Osta. I'm pretty sure that somebody in China is not like, I really want to know what Pavlina's. No, if they are, they want to see you dance. That's what they're doing. That's why I watch TikTok. I just want to see. I want to see what Bruce Willis is doing.
Absolutely.
I want to goof off. I want to laugh. That's the same reason.
Yeah, that's why I go on TikTok. I just want to get a laugh. I want to know the products I need to buy on Amazon or the products I need to buy from Target because they show you all the best stuff, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. Like I love the videos where they're like, don't use this one, use this one. I'm like, wow, I had that one, so I'm gonna switch over. It's so informative. It's very helpful.
I think that's where people get social media so wrong. Is it actually is actually socially good? There's a lot of information you can get, and people just poo-poo on it because they're like, I don't like it. But I'm like, really? If it's so bad, then why is everybody creating streaming shows? And both you and I are on platforms. We both have nationally syndicated shows that are on streaming platforms. You with Bold TV, me with C-Suite Network. Both amazing, right? But they're streamed off of these, and they're not little. These are huge platforms. People see them. They're in people's households. And I think it's almost like we have to continue to educate other people about how these devices work. Twitch, they're not brainwashing your children to join the military. They're just there like, hey, do you have a question? This is what we do in the Navy. This is what we do in the Marine Corps. If you're worried about those recruiters, you should probably be more worried about getting an bunch of active duty Marines on a Friday night who are gaming, because we game in the Marine Corps. We have Wi-Fi in our barracks. You should probably be more worried that your 13-year-old might run into one of us and hear the extreme language that we use because it's an open platform. You're concerned about the recruiter who's behaving himself? Trust me, I've gamed with military. you should, I mean, there's active like special ops teams that play on there and they play teenagers. Like,
Right.
I think it's so funny because people don't look, I mean, I think even like looking at the election, they don't look at that. We're looking at TikTok because you and I have both seen it in the last few weeks. TikTok, TikTok, TikTok. And I'm like, how come nobody's like thinking it's suspicious that all of a sudden TikTok became the enemy and Reels came out? I just,
I know.
Right?
Instagram was like, oh, if they go away, in case they go away, we're here.
We got
we're
you.
here.
We're good.
Don't worry about it. We're here. We got Reels. It's okay. Yeah.
And nobody
like,
thought two things of it.
Everyone's ideas. I love it.
So
funny.
what do you
took,
think
like,
the future is for
Snapchat.
social? Like,
What's up?
what do you think the future, do you think, now you and I are on different spectrums of media, when it comes to like our age brackets of media that we have, obviously you're on our show all the time and you're one of our specialists, but where do you see the future of media? Do you think, I've asked David Grosso the same question, so I can't wait to hear your answer.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to know what he
No
said.
pressure, right? Ooh.
Yeah, seriously, no pressure.
But here's my question. We understand mainstream media is never going to go away. We know that. Fox, right. CNN, NBC, CBS, ABC, and MSNBC and CNBC and Bloomberg, all the big boys, right? I think I listed all the big dogs. Cheddar TV has grown, so this is kind of where I'm getting this, is looking at Cheddar, even Bold. C-Suite, I don't think it's, C-Suite's just all business and entrepreneurs. We're awesome, but we have some news. Our show. But when you look at that, do you see this pivot where the streamers kind of take over, or not take, when I say take over, they start taking more of the market share, and mainstream media is going to be forced to almost compete? Kind of. This is a two-winded question here. I love it when I do these. Kind of the way, like, if this is aging myself and then showing how young you are, National Enquirer, when it was big in the 80s and 90s, I'm sure you're familiar with their story. National Enquirer used to be like that rag, right? You're just like, oh, if the National Enquirer says it's crap, right? But then if you look, National Enquirer, the national news is more like the National Enquirer than the National Enquirer is the National Enquirer. Now we're reporting about aliens now, and anything that some celebrity does, it makes front page news. TMZ. I mean, TMZ broke Kobe. The way the world knew Kobe happened was TMZ. Rag, a celebrity gossip rag broke this news. So do you see now, that's why I get the question is, do you see streamers, Bold, Cheddar, C-Suite, all these other smaller power networks taking some of that market share, and more people your generation and mine going, I can go get some knowledge there. They're going to ask tougher questions. And yeah, we're not the pretty faces that you see on these huge, up the street from you, sitting right there. But do you think that this is what's going to happen in the next few years?
Yeah, so in the next few years, I think the mainstream medias are going to turn into what we now think of as radio, right? So everyone's been saying for the past like 20 years, radio's dead, radio's dead. Well, that's going to be the mainstream media, okay? Like, they're going to be there. Radio is still there. It still exists. There's still AM radio. It's kind of amazing, but it's there. So so radio is its own thing, and then, like, it's going to be how I currently think of radio in a way where it's like, oh, well, mainstream media, it's a little dead because the streaming platforms are going to take over because they're easy, they're accessible. They might not be as clean, polished, and beautiful as Fox and CNBC and all of those, where they're in $1 million studios and everything. Yeah. But they're more real. And Gen Zs and like millennials, they love authenticity. They want they want you to be yourself. They care more about personalities than some anchor figurehead person telling the news. Like, those people, like the anchors, like, they probably have huge social media followings, but younger generations would much rather fall in love with a personality and kind of follow them wherever they go, doing their own thing. So yeah, this is already happening when you think about it. The ratings and everything for all of those mainstream sites have gone down dramatically because people get their news on Twitter. They get it on, shows like your show. They get it on Facebook. They get their news all on their phone, all immediately. Who has time? I don't think I've sat in front of the TV and watched a news network in a really long time. Like, it's been a minute. Yeah. Unless it's on, while I'm in a green room or something. I'm like, oh, cool, look, it's TV. Like, I never do that because I get all my news on social media. I get it on streaming platforms that I enjoy. Like, that's it. And that is what is going to grow even more, in my opinion, because I think the mainstream media at this point, we're already seeing it, they are so biased to whatever they're doing. And I know a lot of the streaming platforms are trying to get more of that. Let's just go back to almost like the Walter Cronkite and just, I want to give you the news. You know what I mean? If you want to watch an opinion show, we also have that. Here's an opinion show for whatever you want to watch. But let's go back to, I just want to give you the facts. I just want to tell you what's happening, because every well-informed young person knows there's bias in the mainstream media, and they're over it. I don't even think they watch it as nearly as not even.
I love that you bring that up. That's such a solid point, because you're right. I mean, there is a difference now, and you see it with podcasting. I mean, how many people listen to Joe Rogan? I mean, look at the money Joe just made from Spotify.
Yes.
Joe is enlightening people, and people are making decisions and understanding the world through what Joe Rogan says, or Lewis Howes, John Lee Dumas. I mean, most people know Bren Brown off of streaming, right? So here's big people, and if you want to go get news, you have outlets that'll give you the straight dope, and you kind of get a mix of it. Our show's a perfect example of it. We'll give you breaking news, but we're going to put our spin on it, and we're going to ask those questions. I mean, that's our goal. If I could go find a guest who's going to answer your question about like one of our guests, perfect example, and he's been a guest this week. For example, somebody asked, can you find somebody who legally can explain what happens, because the media's spinning this on both sides. What if the president doesn't leave the White House, right? It's the first time we've ever dealt with this. Like, it's crazy that we're actually saying it out loud, because the person's never said it, and the news is like, hey, we're going to run with it. But I mean, it's like, hey, can you get somebody? So being able to bring somebody on and answer that question and not have a political bias towards it, I think people need to hear that. And I grow concerned because I see these big outlets, and all they do is they do push their political one-sidedness. And it's scary.
Absolutely. And it's annoying for someone like me who's, I work on political shows. I talk about politics with, different on my ends of things. And it's just like one of those things where it's like, what are you guys doing? Like, do you even fact check some of your stuff? Like, and you're CNN or you're Fox, like what is happening? And like, I see it all the time with like the big ones, like all the ones that you listed, all those mainstream ones where they just like do stuff. And I'm like, I don't know where you guys, like what is actually happening? Like who's controlling all of this? Because it just like, you're just being so obvious with your opinion. And I want to go to you for like legit facts, like, okay, oh, you know what, this network said that and I trust them. I think we're losing trust in all of them, or unless you just really want to hear exactly what you're thinking regurgitated on the TV, then you can watch that and go for it. You know what I mean? That's great, but it's just not, it's not as trustworthy as when, I always bring up Walter Cronkite because like that's my boy, but yeah, I just loved the way he did it. Or like Jessica Savage, like they would just give it to you, like that's the way it was. It's not like mind games almost, so they're trying to control what you're thinking, or they have some sort of agenda with it.
Yeah, like Katie Couric, Peter Jennings,
oh my
Dan
God.
Rather. I mean, these amazing, amazing journalists. And I hate the fact that most of these anchors have no journalistic background. Not that I do, but I still, I think that you need to be a voice. And I think Walter, I mean, great that you and I, another thing that we're alike on, Walter Cronkite was the guy who just spoke it like he saw it. I mean, his reaction to when JFK was killed, you see the glasses come off, you saw the emotion. You don't see that anymore, because so much of this, and I've been on set, and I'm not bashing anything. I refuse to do that. These guys are all very talented. But a lot of folks are reading off teleprompters. And it drives me nuts as somebody who hosts a show, and I know you host a show too. We don't use teleprompters. We kind of just, we have our notes, we know what we're going to talk about, and we kind of just, people
a little bit more
want
off the
that.
cuff.
Yeah. People
Because
want
it's
that.
more authentic. Exactly. It's more authentic. It's more real. You're kind of going off of what is, the first thing that coming to mind, rather than I'm a robot and I'm going to read this teleprompter. You know what I mean? And go word for word for what they're saying.
I'm going to give my opinion, my thought, find a guest to go bounce these ideas off of. And if you walk away going, okay, well, now I'm going to go watch Pavlina's show. I mean, so many people the last time you were on were like, I'm going to go buy her book and I'm going to go watch her show, which is awesome. Because that's like another person who's going to go, okay, it's somebody else. And that's why I posed that question to you, is because I feel people are less and less enfranchised with the media today, just because I think we've been beat down. And here's my last thought, and we'll turn it into a question. But would you say in 2020, one of the positives of this COVID thing, whatever people want to make of it, is we've got used to these remote hits, all of us.
Oh my gosh.
It's kind of our world. Yeah.
I am so good at the remote hits at this point. I have like a whole setup. Like, I know what to do. I put my computer on some books. Like, it has become the easiest thing.
Right.
And I kind of love it. Not gonna lie. I don't have to go out into the real world and like do stuff. No, it's become, I think we're going to be taking, it's kind of, I don't want to compare it to 9/11, but I think the way we change things after 9/11, it's going to be very similar to this. Like, okay, well, this whole COVID thing just happened. Things are going to change. There's going to be more sanitization in this thing, or, a lot of classes are going to be online for a while. We're going to be, I don't know how concerts are going to go, because I was literally just watching this like Travis Scott documentary, and they were all like herded in there. Is that going to happen anymore? I'm not really sure. The world is going to change with this, and the way, TV people have been doing their stuff, and the way people have been getting their news throughout this whole thing has changed drastically. So yeah. That's exactly it.
And I think it's funny because we're able to do it. Like,
Right.
You're able to do these hits. I'm able to do it. Like, I never thought my office would turn into this. Like, I have a clothing rack in here that's a bunch of different like blazers and shirts and things to wear to flip into, the whole time wearing a pair of basketball shorts. Like, hello, that's what I'm doing.
It's really nice. Yeah.
And it's just going to change because we're able to grab your audience. And I look at shows, and I'm going to give her kudos because she won a couple Emmys. Tamron Hall. Tamron Hall's
I love
show.
Tamron Hall. I interviewed her. Yes.
If you look at her guests, say you start the year off January, good guest, don't get me wrong. In February, got a couple of our clients on there. Alexis Haynes went on, amazing guest. And then you look at COVID. She's landed some amazing folks from her kitchen. Like, I mean, if you think about it, John Legend, but this is the world because you can now capture people. They'll turn on their Skype, and it's not hard. Now, okay, I'm in the studio, and I built it. But, you're right. I do a lot of our hits where it's turn on the camera. I use a TV behind me. I throw a picture of Portland behind me, and I sit here. They do the lower third below me, and you don't know I'm sitting in my house. This is the easiest way to do it instead of having to fly to New York, not that I mind flying to New York. I never have a problem flying to New York. Let's be clear. I miss New York. I miss food, people. I miss New York. And the next time I get to go, I get to hang out with you, which is cool. So
yes, absolutely.
But, my point is going to New York. I loved being on set. I loved going to the studio because there's, the studio vibe. You're like
fun. Yeah, it's like a whole vibe.
Yeah,
everyone's sort
like,
of getting makeup done. It's a fun time.
Yeah. Walking into those buildings, folks, if you've never done it and you've walked by them, if you've been to New York and you know where CNN and Fox, if you've done that, you're like, I wish you'd go behind the glass and be like, I'm using Fox because of its location is beautiful.
Or like Good Morning America, because that way you can actually look inside the studio. It's super cool.
And people don't get that's cool, but now doing this remote stuff, it's created an opportunity. And producers, even you and I as a host of shows, we can go get people. We have a good chance to go grab them because they're available and it's accepted.
Yes, and everyone, and I think another thing is like, especially if you love John Legend, for example, you get to kind of see inside of his house. It's like, oh my God, he's got like a bookshelf over there. Like, what's he reading? You know what I mean? Like, it's more personal. It's kind of fun. It's just like, okay, well, that's where they're at. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's more like personal rather than, okay, we're both in a studio. It's very professional, like,
And seeing like Tamron Hall, right? She's in her kitchen.
I know, yeah.
Or Ryan Seacrest, whose house is really ridiculously big, like stupid big. And you see all these folks and you get to see that. And even small networks, like RT America, Scotty News Hughes. I love Scotty. She's in her house in Nashville. She's got a big screen behind her and she's hosting the news 5 days a week and you wouldn't know the difference. It's the same thing in your ear that you hear. And I think we're in such a cool spot now where we could actually get more authenticity, which we've all talked about. Gary Vee talks about it forever. But more and more people, you're seeing that, and you're seeing more of these shows pop up, like yours, like ours. And people are driven to those shows because they're like, it's a fresh face. And we speak not kind of the truth, we do speak the truth. And we kind of just give our insights on the stuff like your shows. I love them because people don't think of it like acne under a mask.
Yeah.
That episode struck home. My daughter and my wife had said the same thing, and they're like, and I shared your episode with them, and they were like, totally watching it. That's totally something we didn't think of. Like, somebody's got this figured out. Like, holy crap, we need it's a good thing.
I love that. Yeah, like everyone has to wear a mask. We're all struggling with this like maskne situation because it's like it's something we've never had to deal with before. It was like a fun little topic. And like those kinds of things are what people want to see. They want to hear that. It's more personal, and everyone likes something that's more personal. Kind of going back to Walter Cronkite, why we like him so much is like when he took off his glasses and we saw that emotion, it was so raw and real. That's what all of America felt. Yeah. And we don't really get that anymore. And I think with these streaming shows, you get that a little bit more. You kind of get the personality of the person instead of, what we see on the mainstream.
Yeah, and you're right. I think the last time we saw emotion out of anyone was, unfortunately the date is getting close again as the anniversary of 9/11 comes. I think is the last time, unfortunately, one of the voices a lot of people remember, he's no longer on TV, was thrown off for misbehavior on the Today Show, is the one voice I remember. I mean, Matt Lauer's voice has been used all over the place, so it's kind of weird when you see those replays, but I mean, we all remember that day and the voices we heard. So I know Cronkite is my parents' generation, they watched him on the news. I saw the tail end of him. I mean, I watched all of his replays of stuff because he's just amazing.
I did too.
And like Peter Jennings and Dan Rather, and I think like Tom Brokaw, if there's going to be a name.
Oh, Tom Brokaw, right? Yeah.
Brokaw's voice is like, you just want to listen to Tom Brokaw. Like I always tell my wife, I'm like, Brokaw, I just want to put my hand in my chin and just go, talk to me. I don't even know what you're going to say, but I just want to hear you say it. Because
I interviewed him like years ago, and he was such a nice guy. He's so cool.
He's an amazing, I've met him, never got to interview him. He's amazing. But I mean, I think that's where we're at. And I hope more people start reporting the news. And I've seen articles that have come out, and they're really, and I love seeing it now, where people are going, these journalists aren't doing their job. These folks are
they're not journalists. That's the thing. Like, they're not even journalists. Like,
they have their agendas.
A journalist doesn't, everyone has an agenda. That's exactly what I'm getting at. Is like, a journalist doesn't have an agenda. You're reporting on what is happening. No. You should have no bias in that. And when you do, that's a problem. That means you're no longer a journalist. You're an opinion, opinion host, opinion columnist. I don't know. That's when the word opinion comes into your title, because you're not reporting on what's actually happening. You're trying to get people to think a certain way or change their views on something rather than just giving them what is actually happening.
And you're right, because mainstream media has become that. I'm not going to pick on people directly, but we know the big ones. I mean, the big ones, when people are like, well, what do you watch? And I'm like, I can't watch either of the two biggest networks. And trust me, there's one particular host on a network that I absolutely am a fanboy for. I've met him a few times, and I adore him. He is great, but he just went after the dude who owns my Chillo, or whatever the hell it comes, my pillow. And like, I was like, dude, you're so much of a better journalist than that. Like, I love you as a journalist because I love your reporting, and you're not like the other guy who is also on your network that just goes after people for no reason. Like, you actually do investigative journalism, and that's my kind of journalism. But I mean, I think both sides have to do that, because I see it even on Insta, where people are putting their shows on Instagram TV and they're like, masks are fake. And I'm like, oh, dude. And then you go argue it. I'm like, then how come all the doctors, there's this one doctor. And I'm like, I've interviewed
Fauci
10.
Not wear them, then he's saying to wear them. I'm just going with whatever they're saying right now to do and hoping that this stupid thing goes away. Like, that's all I care about, with the whole COVID thing. But just... what can you do? You know what I mean? Like, they clearly there's a lot of confusion going on. I think we're all confused. No one really knows what the best course of action is. Just go with the flow. Yeah. You know what I mean?
That's just do what you have to do.
I don't want to say do what you're told, because don't impinge on the freedoms, but at the same time, just if you're gonna take your mask off or whatever, just stay away from people. Like, I don't know. Do whatever you think is respectable. That's fine.
I've seen a lot of it, and it's like people want an award for being rebellious and like not doing it. And I'm like, dude, just follow. It's like Nazi Germany, and I'm like, not at all. I'm like, read a history book.
It's a little worse, I think. So.
I mean, and trust me, I live in Portland, Oregon. You know all about what's going on in our city, and everybody thinks we're all in line with these horrible rioters, and we're not. I feel like I'm constantly defending myself. I mean, it used to be, I'll tell you this, Pavlina, and then we'll go. I used to be proud when people were like, where are you at? I used to say Portland, because it'd be confusing to say Beaverton, which, by the way, that's where I live, in case anybody's playing at home. I live in Beaverton, Oregon, which is home of Nike, because now I just go with that, because I'm afraid to say Portland, because people will be like, oh. And I'm like, trust me, if you think I'm down there, I would be on the other line with law enforcement because I totally support those guys. They're being attacked. This isn't about Black Lives Matter, that's a whole nother subject we could go off on.
It started to, and now it's evolved to something that I'm not really
the
sure.
sad part is it's all your generation, my friend.
I know.
It's your generation being arrested. It's a bunch of white young people being arrested, taking the movement, and they're just being vandals and burning things. And I don't understand that, because that's where I go, well, your generation has done some amazing things. You have amazing folks like yourself and others. And now it's polluted by these clowns who are 80 some odd days
They're the ones
and
getting
looting.
attention too. They're the ones that are like, oh, this is the upcoming generation. They're all Antifa-like. And it's just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Some of us are like entrepreneurs. Like we care about the environment. We want, like, we're good, productive citizens, but the rest of the world sees the people, unfortunately, in Portland. I was actually, talking to some of our listeners on a radio show that I produce, and one of them told me he was from Portland, and my first thought, and I've never been to Portland or Oregon even, and my first thought was, oh gosh, Portland, like, how y'all doing over there? Like, it's kind of like when COVID was running rampant in New York, everyone's like, oh God, are you like good? Like, everything okay? It was almost like shameful to live in New York because we were like so bad. And it feels the same way with Portland because it's just like, it's just so bad over there right now. We don't know what's going to happen, but
it's bananas. It's disappointing because it's just another kind of thorn in the side of just,
but there's
it is a beautiful city that's just,
I know,
just being destroyed by, again, politics. And it's he said, she said, finger pointing, and that's a whole nother story. But I wish, again, it's leadership taking to social media instead of taking to, every time somebody has a pulpit, they don't use it the right way, and it drives me nuts.
True.
It's like, if you're going to preach, come on, you got to preach for the greater good. If you're a leader, you got to lead. I hate to say it, but you can't act like you can't act like we're all in 5th grade, and you gotta do what's right.
My biggest thing is, like, I think you should, stand strong with your beliefs and whatever it is that you want to fight for. But also, like, you need to have the greater good in mind. You can't just, like, shut down whatever just because it's not your way. It's like, okay, like, now we find compromise. These are things that we learned in kindergarten, guys. Let's bring it back to that. And, it's just like that's what you do. You find your compromises. You stand strong with whatever you're thinking or your beliefs. And you make it work so where it's for the greater good. Because there's always, give and take on everything. And I think when you come to that compromise, which is where we're having some sort of like disconnect at this point, because it feels like, I don't know if you feel it, but I feel like a disconnect. Like there's definitely some like chords that are not aligning.
Oh yeah.
But
you don't see what we see, and that's my thing when I get you guys on here, and I feel your pain in New York because you guys always get judged for everything. But Portland, on the other hand, what's not being reported is our city councilmen and all city council people, they're not in support of law enforcement. It's the polar opposite. And what you said, I chuckled on camera here because I feel like I am back in kindergarten, and I feel like when they told you only remember the stuff from high school or the lessons that you'll use in life, I feel in kindergarten this is a very basic concept. It's like, look, folks, you've got to think beyond you and your little buddy that you're eating glue with. You've got to think. You've got to think about here, I'll break it down for everybody, and then we'll go. Small businesses. Let's just think of small businesses. They're already devastated. You're not helping the matters. Nobody brings them up. And it's like they bring it up in New York. They bring it up in their cities. But in Portland, it's, we want to fight for racial injustice and police reform. We're not happy. And I'm like, well, what about the sub shop?
What about that small business that you just burnt down?
Yeah.
Do you care about that? Do you
what
care
about
that
they can't open because you vandalized their store, or their insurance rates have gone up because you break their damn windows every other night?
Like they speaking of research that we're supposed to be doing, those people will just ruin everything. They don't care who's the owner. If it's African American family, if it's Hispanic, they don't care whose business it is. They just want to burn down a building. They just want to vandalize something. And it's just like, okay, well, you just destroyed someone's livelihood. Someone like that, they've worked their whole lives to build that. They, maybe came to this country, like whatever it is, and what you're so-called fighting for, and you just burnt it down. Like,
well, Pavlina, I think the biggest problem we have here is there's a bunch of people who say that they have a lot of knowledge in their hands, but they can't open a dictionary and find out the word fascist that they keep using. It's actually them. It's really weird when you're like, you're a fascist, and you're like, I actually looked it up. You actually are. Just say.
Yeah.
I don't want. It's funny how it's working, because you're right. They're not looking, and they're claiming that they're so like revolution, and I've seen them compare themselves to the American Revolution, which no, you can't compare yourself to those, or what we did in World War II, which makes me cringe, because Antifa seriously sends out this picture of the mighty warriors storming the beach at D-Day saying, "This is us going to fight." And I'm like, you just told the greatest generation, you just compared yourself to the greatest. You're pointing laser pointers in cops' eyes and throwing soda cans.
For real. Or throwing Molotov cocktails, or what they're
and
called.
burning buildings.
Like, are you kidding me?
Federal buildings. And then you're upset that the feds respond.
Yeah, you should see like the army of police officers around City Hall here in New York. It's crazy.
It's unfortunate.
It's crazy that they have to do that.
Yeah.
So it makes me nervous, Eric.
Yeah. It's dangerous, and I think the point you and I are both trying to make here is everybody be safe. We live in a world that we unfortunately can no longer control. We brought up 9/11. It is just a few short, days, weeks away from us now. And it just brings enlightenment. We used to think our enemy was abroad and would be coming after us there. And unfortunately, what we've learned is people will use election 2020 as this reason to completely disrupt the system. I mean, I told this story. I didn't tell you, but I'll tell it to you now. We're on air. We might as well share. I took my wife out on a date a week ago on a Saturday. Yeah. Beautiful restaurant. It's used by a lot of NBA teams when they're in town. A lot of the big brands that are here in our city use this restaurant. And at 10 p.m., they came to our table. We were the last couple people in there. It was, Saturday night COVID. It's not like it's like it used to be.
Popping, yeah.
Popping is not happening. And they came to, but we were celebrating, so we were having a couple, glasses. And they came and they said, "We moved your car up to the front, Mr. Mitchell." And I was like, "Oh, why'd you do that? That's nice of you." And they're like, "Well, we just want to let you know, could you wrap up your drink? We want to get you out of here. There's a protest a couple blocks away, and we want you to be safe."
Oh, wow.
And I was like taken back by that, because I live in America. I mean, at the last time I checked, I live in the greatest country in the world, and I don't care who my president is. I care that I live here. I've defended my country. And the fact that I had to be warned like I live in some war-torn crap hole, like I'm going to be attacked. And then I saw video footage of people walking home from a bar, viciously attacked and beaten by these cretins for doing nothing other than walking the sidewalk and happening to go through their little get-together where 300 of them have apparently nothing better to do at 1 a.m.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, aren't you guys tired? Like, go to bed. I don't know. Like, I don't know what. I don't have time to do that.
Weed is legal here. Weed is legal here. Apparently, those people don't buy weed, because at 2 a.m., my ass would be stoned if I was 20 some odd years old. Clearly, they don't have jobs because they've been doing this for 80 days.
Well, I mean, unemployment's pretty bad right now, but still, it's.
But you should be looking for a job throwing cans at cops.
Do something productive with your time. Like, I just don't see, I don't see where they're accomplishing anything besides ruining your own city, which doesn't make any sense to me, and causing all of this havoc. Like, it feels like they just have all of this anger that they're just trying to get out, and they just the problem is law enforcement can't do anything, so they have free reign, which is really problematic.
And people were upset when we had the federal officers come here to back up our guys, because it just all goes back to leadership. At the end of the day, we can point fingers at leadership, and nobody steps up and protects the folks that protect. And like I've said on this show for the last 3 weeks, and I'll say it over and over again until people stop watching. Hopefully they don't. But you can't say every cop is bad. Saying every cop is bad is BS. It's like saying every employee we work with is good. I know that's not true. Every Marine I served with was good. That's definitely not true. There's bad people in the world. Not everybody's a great human being. You fire them and move on. Unfortunately, bad things happen. We don't control those things, but we cannot punish the greater good and say everybody's bad, because we all screw up. We all have bad days. If you lose your job or you go to prison for it, there's been officers that do that. That young woman, police officer who walked in the wrong apartment and shot that man, she's going to jail for a long, long time. That's her fault, her bad. She's being punished. Does that mean every cop in Dallas is bad? No, I have friends on the force. They're good. Just like Portland PD. They're being blamed for Minneapolis. That's what the claim to fame is this is George Floyd related. And I'm just like, can you get some African-American people to kind of show up to your event? Because so far it's a bunch of angry white people
Ugh.
who, by the way, if you do the history lesson, and folks here, if you go Google some of these people, they graduated from some of the most pristine private schools in Portland.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you really angry about? Oh, you're just an anarchist who has nothing better to do. Apparently, video
Really?
games and weed and and having a social life, this is your social life, isn't going out with your friends and having fun, which you should do in your 20s. It's, hey, Bob, let's go get some motel cocktails and blow things up. This isn't, I didn't know we were in downtown Iraq in 04. That's what it feels like. But anyways. Okay, we vented for a long time. I think we got on our pulpit and we threw it around. So as always, Pavlina, it's always awesome to have you here. Folks, make sure you go check out Pavlina's great book and her show on Bold TV. We will share both of them in there, and the link. Go out and buy her book. It's awesome. Trust me, we own it, so that's how we know it's awesome. But I want to thank you for joining us. We'll have you back real soon. So thank you so much for joining us. And folks, thank you for tuning in, and we'll be right back after these messages. Thank you for watching today's show. As always, if you'd like to be a guest or you know somebody that we should have on our show as a guest, feel free to email us at hello@tothepointtv.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And you can also email us if you have a complaint, want to give us kudos, high fives, or if you have an additional question for a guest. Feel free to email us again at hello@tothepointtv.com. Our Twitter is up and running, and it's for social good. Not yelling and screaming political or anything else crazy on our Twitter. So follow us on Twitter at @ToThePointTV, and we'll tweet back at you. And as always, we want you to check out our IG. We love Instagram. Our Instagram stories are up, they're buzzing, and they're meant for you. We love our fans and followers, and we want you to know who our guests are coming on, and we want you to engage with us, and we want to engage with you. So make sure you're following us at Instagram at @ToThePointTV. Now, we love you on Facebook, and we want to make sure, because you're probably watching this on Facebook, you're like, why would you already follow us? But tell a friend that they can come follow our show and never miss a live episode. As you know, here on Facebook, make sure you head, if you're not on Facebook watching this, then it's different, but our Facebook is To The Point with Eric Mitchell. So make sure you follow us there so you always get notified when our show goes live at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Now, for the folks over on YouTube. Now, YouTube, we love our YouTube, and our channel is growing, and we love you there. Now, if you missed the live show at 12 p.m. Eastern, you can catch the premiere, which is re-recorded. The premiere on YouTube goes down every day at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and simply just go do that. So remember, with YouTube, what we want you to do is smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, and flick that bell. That's right, hit the bell. Give that bell some bell love, and that way you know when we're on air and you can catch our latest episode. Check out our playlist. All of them broken down by the day and guest and show, so you can always stay up to date. Once again, on behalf of the entire team here at To The Point, we want to thank you for, again, tuning in and watching our show, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow on To The Point. As always, I am your host, Eric Mitchell. Be safe, be strong, be smart, and God bless America.
Let's get to the point with Eric Mitchell. Let's get to the point. Sit and enjoy. This is Eric Mitchell. He the host of the show. Get to the point. He is the voice. We needed this, something more. This is a daily show that's known for politics and the sports. Ain't no limit to whoever you may see at this point. To celebrities, Eric he's beast in the joint. As a veteran, put him at ease, then anoint. Every conversation can never be disappointed. Whether tragic or it's happy, Eric will cover whatever's happening. Whether it be your gymnast, toe tapping, talking about nearly any athlete, not taking a back seat. You're never gonna get it past T. Everybody running from it, it's a stampede. But he's on it like this man who took that knee. Mr. Mitchell's way too crafty.